Hello everyone, welcome to Out of Spec Testing. I'm Ryan, and today we've got the Chevrolet Silverado EV extended range, and we're taking it on a 10% challenge. That's our road trip simulation test. Unfortunately, it's a little bit cold, so let me tell you a little bit about the car and a little bit about our testing procedures, but I'm going to do that in the car. I'm here in the nice warm truck because I wanted to deliver this information without shivering through my teeth. But today we have the Chevrolet Silverado EV LT extended range. And that's quite a mouthful of a name, but essentially this is the Silverado EV with the 20 module pack. Not the 24 module pack, that's the big 205 kilowatt hour battery that we've seen plenty of times. This is not that. This has about 180 kilowatt hours, similar to the Silverado EV 3WT work truck. And again, it's 20 modules instead of 24, so 180 kilowatt hours. It's rated for an EPA rated range of 390 miles, and I recently took it on a range test. During that range test, we did have cold temperatures like we do right now, and it actually did pretty decently, though it was pretty far off the EPA estimated range, but again, that's to be expected with this type of conditions and these types of temperatures. But this is a really great vehicle. It's a great truck. It's got impressive range, and it's not even the biggest battery that you can get. And what we're going to do today, right now, is do a road trip simulation test. This is our 10% challenge. And this essentially is just going to see how far you can go with 15 minutes of charging while you're driving at 80 miles per hour. Now I want to tell you a little bit about our procedures. The first thing we did was set the tires to factory recommended pressures. We do that for all of our tests. The next thing I did was I went ahead and drove the car and drove it down to precisely 10% state of charge and preconditioned the battery. Again, we think that this is a pretty reasonable simulation of a road trip. For road trips, you want to pull into chargers at low states of charge so you can maximize your charging speeds. However, we know that most people don't really want to pull in out of spec style with 0% state of charge, so we think 10% is a pretty reasonable value that people will like to do. We're going to go ahead and, with our fully preconditioned vehicle, just plug into these Electrify America chargers, which will give us maximum charging speeds. Now, there is a slight delay between when we plug it in and when it actually starts charging. That's called the handshake time, and we record it separately, and then we'll have a full 15 minutes of actual charging. During those 15 minutes, I'll be in the car and I'll have the climate running. And again, this is to simulate a road trip situation. Oftentimes on a road trip, you're hanging out in your car while you're charging, and you'll have the HVAC running to keep you comfortable. This is an important detail because the HVAC system of a car is the same system that's used to control the temperature of the battery. So that HVAC system is basically doing double duty. It needs to make sure that the cabin is comfortable, and it also needs to make sure that the battery is in a good temperature range so it can receive maximum charging speeds. And again, this is all just to simulate a road trip scenario. It's very possible that this could lead to some thermal throttling, but it's a very realistic scenario and something that you could definitely run into in a real life situation. Once I've charged for 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and unplug and put the car into the most efficient drive mode, put the climate control in the most efficient setting between 68 and 72, and do a nice quick drive over to the highway just over there. And I'll do a nice gentle acceleration up to 80 miles an hour. And that's a pretty fast speed, faster than our 70 mile per hour range test, but for road trips, we think that this is pretty reasonable. There are a lot of states that have maximum speed limits of 70, 75, 80 plus miles an hour. So 80 is a good number. And if you do tend to drive slower, that just means that you'll get more range out of this. We'll merge onto the highway at 80 miles an hour, doing a nice gentle acceleration, and we'll just keep on driving. Once I've used approximately half of my replenished battery, I'm going to just go ahead and turn around. I'm going to put this charger in as a destination again, and this does a couple things. First, it makes sure our route is a out and back style test, so this helps cancel out any wind and elevation gains. Additionally, it makes sure that the car preconditions the battery. This takes a little bit of energy, but we think that this is a realistic scenario. On a road trip, you're hopping from charger to charger. So this is what you would likely see in the real world. And I'm actually going to be staying on the highway for the entire time of this test. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the state of charge of the vehicle. Once it moves from 11% down to 10% state of charge, that's where our test will end. That's going to be our result for the 10% challenge and how far it went on our simulated road trip. So with that, let's wait for one of these chargers to open and get charging. Okay, we are now plugged in, doing the handshake. I'm timing that. Heard a click. And start. Cool, let's see, it's ramping up. We can take a look in the car as well. Still ramping up. Wow, impressive. Let's see what we're getting. 297, which is pretty much exactly what they claim. They say up to 300 kilowatts peak charging speed, so excellent. Really happy to see that. I'm in the car, got the climate control running, and it is receiving 301 kilowatts, and I believe that's to the battery, so pretty impressive. Let's see how long it can hold it. So far it has been, let's see, almost 3 minutes. Just about 5 minutes in, and 22% state of charge, still doing 305 kilowatts. Very impressive. Halfway through the charging test, and it is still cranking along 306 kilowatts, 28% state of charge. This is great. Looks like right around 30% we're starting to do this taper. It's a slow walk down. We started at 306. But hey, that's about 8 minutes at 300 kilowatts. Pretty solid. And still doing 297, so hard to complain. At 35% state of charge, it dropped down to 250 kilowatts, and it's continuing with that taper down, I think. But 250 kilowatts is nothing to sneeze at. We've got about 20 seconds left, and it's just been hovering right around 250 kilowatts. Got 10 more seconds. Okay, let's see what we did. 71.3 kilowatt hours, only up to 45%, but dang. That is one of, if not the most energy that we've ever taken on one of these 10% challenges. Very impressive. 71.3, wow. All right, I can close this all up and we can get going. Okay, I've reset the trip, and let's see. Drive modes, normal. And I have the Eco Climate on. Let me turn this back on. And I will have this set to 71. And yeah, we can go ahead and get started. I also have a mounted action camera, so we should be able to do this without having to hold the phone for most of it. Excited about that, and I've heard some positive stuff so far. Quick status update. Unfortunately, I could not get the action camera to work. Something's wrong with the SD card, so we're gonna have to go without it. So, without the SD card, we can simply just go ahead and take off. And it's just gonna be a nice gentle drive onto the highway. Another quick thing to mention, I do not have any of the accessory heating on, so heated steering wheel, heated seats, cooled seats, none of that is on, and that is to maximize efficiency and maintain the same protocol for all of our tests. Though I really would love to have heated steering wheel. And now, nice gentle acceleration up until 80, except there's a car in the way. So we'll have to navigate the traffic a little bit. And there we go, 81 miles an hour. I wanted to mention that you'll see 81 miles per hour indicated, but that is actually 80 miles per hour on the GPS. And that's what we do for all of our tests. And again, just starting out, but it's saying we're getting 1.7 miles per kilowatt hour, which is pretty decent for these kinds of speeds. Now, I unplugged with 45%. That means I added 35%. And let's make sure that Super Cruise doesn't get too mad at me. But half of 35%, somewhere, what, like 17-ish percent. So 45 minus 17, 28. So if you didn't follow that math, I'm just figuring out where half of my replenish range will be. And that's going to be somewhere around high to 20% range, or 28, 29-ish percent. But this is a lot easier because I've got route planning and it tells me its predicted state of charge at arrival. So it'll be probably somewhere around 28-ish percent state of charge, but I'll be using the route planner as well, and that's when I'm going to go ahead and turn around. And the idea is that hopefully we can make it back to near the charger with right about 10% state of charge. So it's a precise out and back test for as much as we possibly can. We will end up going back and forth potentially near the charger. There are a lot more exits nearby, and it ensures that we have no net elevation gain. But that's going to be our plan. Essentially go out, turn back around. Hopefully we'll hit the charger with close to 10%, but if not, we can just turn back north, and not a huge deal. One thing I wanted to mention was where we usually set the bar for a good result. On this 10% challenge road trip simulation, we like to say about 100 miles is a good result. So if a car, or truck in this case, can make it 100 miles at 80 miles an hour with 15 minutes of charging, that's pretty good. However, trucks are notoriously not the most efficient, and generally they have not done the best on our tests here. So I'm excited to see what this will do with such incredible charging. I know the efficiency won't be great, but the charging might be able to make up for it. We're currently 30 miles into the drive, and just wanted to update 32% state of charge, and our efficiency is an indicated 1.2 miles per kilowatt hour. That is pretty abysmal, but I guess that's what you get when you combine cold temperatures with high speed and a big old truck. Now 40 miles in, still indicating 1.2 miles per kilowatt hour. I went ahead and put the charger in as a destination, and it says we would arrive at 11% state of charge. So I'm just going to go one exit further here, and we should arrive close to 10%, and I think that'll be perfect. Regardless, this is not a very impressive result so far. I'm hoping that we can see some better figures and better efficiency on the way back. One exit further, and it now has a projected state of charge at arrival of 9%, so perfect. That'll be right on the money, hopefully. Our exit is in less than a mile, and I'm going to do, of course, like always, a nice gentle deceleration using regenerative brakes, putting as much energy back into the battery pack as I possibly can. And on the other side, doing a nice gentle acceleration up to 81 indicated miles per hour. There we go, 81, perfect. Now we can hopefully set Super Cruise and just relax for the ride back. As you can see, the vehicle is getting ready for fast charging. That means it's preconditioning the battery like you would on a typical road trip. And again, that's all just to simulate what you would actually see in the real world. We've gone 61 miles, indicated 1.2 miles per kilowatt hour. Not sure if we're going to make it to the 100-mile mark, but it's looking like it'll be close. And there it is, 10% state of charge, and we went 90 miles with an indicated efficiency of 1.4 miles per kilowatt hour. If we take a look at the energy usage, we spent 95% of the battery on driving and 5% preconditioning the battery. This is overall a little disappointing, especially considering how much energy was delivered, how well it did on charging. I was really hoping it would do a little bit better, but let's take a moment and see how this actually compares with all the other trucks, its real competition. Well, there you have it, folks. This Chevy Silverado EV won 2 superlatives in our 10% challenge. This was the most energy we've seen delivered by a vehicle ever. It was more than the new 2025 Porsche Taycan, which has incredible charging itself. What is most mind-blowing to me is this was the medium-sized battery. You can get a Silverado EV with a larger battery that charges even faster. Really incredible stuff. This was also, unfortunately, the least efficient vehicle we've ever tested. I suppose it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise considering both the conditions and the fact that it's a big, large truck. And large vehicles just tend to not do well on this test, and that's largely because of the speed. Wind drag is a function of velocity squared. In English, we basically need more and more and more power as we go faster and faster and faster. This puts large vehicles as well as unaerodynamic vehicles at a comparative disadvantage. And large and unaerodynamic kind of describes trucks, so they're not going to do the best on these tests. In a previous test, I had the Kia EV6 GT, and that's the really spicy one, but it definitely sacrifices some efficiency for that performance. Regardless, it has good charging, and it was actually able to do well on our 10% challenge. In that video, I claimed that excellent charging can make up for poor efficiency, and this Silverado EV really put that to the test at the most extreme level. And as it turns out, there's a limit. There is a certain point in which you need to have a certain amount of efficiency to do well on these tests, and we're seeing here, despite the truly incredible charging, the actual end result was not as impressive as many of us would like to see. There is another topic that I do want to discuss, and that's that trucks are just doing poorly on this test. Well, we've only had a few trucks to test, none of them did well, and again, trucks are really big vehicles, and this puts them at a comparative disadvantage in this test. Some commenters have suggested that it could make sense to separate into vehicle groups, and I've gone ahead and done that. And you can find this on our website, outofspecstudios.com. You can go ahead and sort by vehicle groups, so it's easier to see how vehicles do relative to other vehicles in their class. Some commenters also brought up a very valid point, and that's about our across-the-board measurement of 100 miles being a good result. I'm not sure if that blanket statement necessarily makes the most sense. I'm starting to really see where they're coming from. After all, we probably wouldn't compare the MPG of a Toyota Prius with like a Ford F-150. They're completely different vehicles, different classes, different capabilities, different use cases. And I think that could be taken the same way here. We've got pretty different vehicles, and I think it could make sense to have different thresholds for each of them. Now, I think it's important to acknowledge that these thresholds for what is a good result are completely subjective and arbitrary, and they probably should and will change over time as technology progresses. As we get better charging, more efficiency, thresholds should increase over time. But I think it could make sense to have different levels for what a good threshold is for sedans, crossovers, SUVs, and trucks. I don't know if we have enough data for the trucks or SUVs yet, but looking at sedans, I think perhaps somewhere around the 120 miles could be considered a good result. And then looking at crossovers, somewhere around, say, like 90 miles could be considered a good result. Either way, I don't think it's the most important and critical factor, but I'm interested to hear what everyone has to say, whether you guys think it makes sense to have different thresholds for what we consider as good, and if you do, where do you think those thresholds should lie? Well, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.